In the dead of night, without media coverage or diplomatic fanfare, the African Union landed in Burkina Faso. No red carpets. No smiling handshakes. Just shadows, whispers, and armed escorts. This was not the arrival of peace envoys, it was the movement of power cloaked in silence. Weeks before, rumors swirled of rising tensions in the Sahel, but no one expected the O to move this fast, this quiet, this deep under the radar. Something had triggered urgency. Something bigger than politics. Something they didn't want the world to see. Aircraft bearing no clear markings touched down at Ouagadougou International Airport. Civilian eyes were blocked out. The press blacked out. A digital wall went up around communications, no leaks, no statements, no trace. Even OS official channels said nothing for hours. That's not standard diplomacy. That's covert action. And when global institutions move like that, it's never in your favor. Inside the airport, special envoys walked like men on a deadline, faces stiff, briefcases locked, security airtight. They were here for more than a talk. They were here for a mission. And not everyone was supposed to know. The people of Burkina didn't welcome them. Not because they weren't informed, but because they weren't invited. Since Captain Ibrahim Traoré rose to power, the winds have shifted. Foreign influence is no longer met with applause, it's met with suspicion. So when armored convoys left the tarmac and sped into the capital, the streets didn't cheer, they watched. And what they saw didn't feel like help. It felt like pressure. It felt like something bigger was at stake. And it was. The African Union had no choice but to come. Traoré's rise didn't just change the politics of Burkina Faso, it threatened the balance of Africa. Young, militant, and unafraid, he defied France. He cast off ECOWAS. He rejected foreign control. That's not just rebellion, that's contagion. Other nations were watching. And that's exactly what scared the establishment. The O was not there to congratulate him. They were there to control the narrative before it spread. This wasn't just a visit, it was a response. A move made under pressure from external powers. A trip rushed, unplanned, and reactive. Because the Sahel is slipping out of the West's grip. And Burkina Faso stands at the center of that storm. The African Union, once imagined as a symbol of unity, now finds itself torn between representing the people and obeying the powers funding their decisions. Their arrival was meant to be quiet, but its silence screamed louder than any speech. It told a story of fear. Of urgency. Of a collapsing order trying desperately to keep its mask on. Burkina didn't flinch. The streets remained calm, but their silence carried weight. The people knew this wasn't a friendly call. This was surveillance disguised as diplomacy. And when institutions move in silence, the truth becomes louder. The African Union came without a voice, but the people heard everything. Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not hesitate when the African Union arrived. He did not stall, he did not compromise, he did not bend his knee. In a room filled with seasoned diplomats and powerful envoys, the youngest leader in Africa spoke with the weight of a generation behind him. He looked them in the eye and rejected every veiled threat, every polished offer, every masked attempt at control. They came with promises dressed as partnerships, but he saw through the costume. He knew what they really wanted: to steer his country back into the hands of the system he was fighting to escape. He did not flinch when they spoke of democracy. He did not waver when they referenced African stability. Because behind every soft word, he heard the same old echo of foreign command. They wanted him to act like a puppet, but he had already cut the strings. They came to remind him of protocols, but he came to break them. They expected diplomacy, but he gave them defiance. They expected fear, but he gave them fire. And that fire is spreading across borders faster than they can contain. Traoré told them plainly Burkina Faso is no longer a servant of the West, and it will not obey institutions that move on behalf of old powers. He didn't hide behind formality. He didn't read from a script. His words were raw, direct, and dangerous to the very structure the African Union was sent to protect. He exposed their role not as protectors of Africa, but as defenders of a manufactured peace that keeps African nations under silent chains. They came expecting control. They left with resistance burned into their memory. They tried to convince him with aid packages. They offered financial backing. They whispered about rebuilding the country, about security, about cooperation. But Traoré knew what cooperation really means: submission to foreign-designed systems, economic traps disguised as support, policies approved only if they benefit the architects in the shadows. He refused to sell out his people for empty promises. He refused to trade Burkina's independence for applause from global boardrooms. He chose struggle over comfort, because freedom has never come cheap. This was not arrogance, it was clarity. Traoré has read the pattern. He has watched nations fall into quiet ruin while smiling for cameras. He has watched leaders praised in headlines while their people suffer in silence. He has no interest in being the West's favorite African. He is not looking for handshakes, he is looking for liberation. His refusal was not political, it was spiritual. It was a call to every young African leader who is tired of begging for respect. It was a shot fired into the heart of old alliances that never served Africa's true future. The African Union came with strategy, but they were met with revolution. They brought blueprints for compliance, but left with the imprint of rebellion. Traoré rejected their conditions not because he is reckless, but because he is awake. And once a leader sees clearly, no institution can blind him again.